This week on Great Conversations, Joe Corey speaks with David Mirkin. David Mirkin produced, wrote, and directed Chris Elliott's Get a Life series. The complete series is being released on DVD by Shout Factory. Be prepared for a conversation that will cover Bob Elliott, The Simpsons, George Harrison's guitar, James Taylor, and Jackie Earle Haley, the world's greatest troubled teen actor. Now let's join Joe Corey as he calls David Mirkin on a Monday afternoon.
Hi, Joe. It's Dave Mirkin. How's it going?
It's going weird. I had to clean out my childhood room today, so.
Oh, you're kidding. Why is that?
My folks are they're finally deciding they can't use the house as a warehouse anymore, and so they're like, well, we need to unpack it. So it was kind of astounding going through stuff from the 70s and going, oh Lord, I had that.
It is. It's very emotional to do that. I feel the same way.
Although I did find a still sealed in the plastic Heather Thomas puzzle.
There you go. You know, I happen to know that that's worth $35,000.
Oh, good.
Be very
good.
careful.
I need to keep it away from the toddler then. So now, what does it feel like for the first time in your life when someone says, "Hey, when's Get a Life coming on DVD? You can go buy it."
Well, in terms of the whole series, absolutely. We certainly had some great response when we got to release like 8 episodes at the turn of the millennium, and that was all we could afford to put out because of the music clearances back then. And we were just about to put out the box set following that because those 2 sets were so popular. But then Rhino it got eaten by Warner Brothers and became a place that you couldn't do that anymore. And it's actually some of the people who ran Rhino formed Shout Factory, and that's why we're there, but basically a decade later.
So now, did it feel almost like family when you went back with those guys to rework the set?
It's great to work with them because they're very what we call creative friendly. They understand the need. They'll give you a phone call and they go, we might not be able to afford to use all the music, that you originally put. We're going to have to see. And I'm saying, well, it's really important that we have all the music because that's part of the writing. The music is very integral to that. And they go, we get it, we'll make it happen. And, they go and they kill themselves to satisfy the crazy creative desires. And we're very grateful for that. That becomes a rarer and rarer commodity in big-time show business.
Well, especially, just the people holding the music rights nowadays, they seem more nasty than ever when it comes to trying to negotiate a deal.
It's very tough. One of the things that's been to our advantage is the fact that DVD sales are depressed, that you can kind of go and say, hey, we can't pay that much money, and they kind of believe you. And then because the music industry is depressed, they're like, well, we want something, so it kind of all works out, And so this is one of the reasons this was a good time for it to happen, because it actually, the numbers, I don't study them carefully myself, but I am told they worked. So that was the good news.
That's the key. I knew a guy spent a year working on a Bill Haley and the Comets documentary.
Right.
And they were dealing with the families, they were dealing with the record company, and then when it came time for publishing, the price for Rock Around the Clock equaled the budget of the film. It was like... So,
well, again, this is where one of the big heroes in this, and this has always been the case, has been REM. They're such great guys, and they're such fans of the show that they gave us a price break back in 2000 when we did the DVDs, and they gave us a price break now. Those guys are, they're just gods to us to let us do this for much less than they should rightfully be paid. But like I said, incredibly fair, and it could not happen without them.
They've always been bizarre rock stars. I remember when they were way back when, I guess, and you'd bump into them at clubs and stuff. And they were not the rock stars when you'd run into some other people who weren't that big as they were.
That's right. That's right. No.
So it's good to know they maintain that even on a bigger level.
They do. They're good people all through and through.
Now you described the film. I remember when I was reading it up, and you were describing the show as Dennis the Menace, as hitting 30.
That's right, and still being at home. Yeah.
And still being home. Now, did it feel more like Dennis the Menace when Brian Doyle Murray came on to be Mr. Wilson?
Actually, early on, when Chris had said, let's do Dennis the Menace, and I was saying you're never going to get the rights to do Dennis the Menace, was a dark thing, we talked about having a Mr. Wilson character, and I was like, I don't really think we need that, and it morphed much more into being more about the parents and such. And I think by the time we were doing, the second season, we were so far beyond thinking that we had already we were really doing the adventures and exploits of a guy who was quickly losing complete grip on reality and having various psychotic episodes and psychotic breaks. And so that I don't think that those words came up at all by the second season, Dennis the Menace.
So now, whose idea was it to keep killing Chris off for that second season?
Well, it was always my idea to kill him off, and I started doing it in the first season. He dies from the Paperboy 2000. That's the first one. Then he gets shot off camera in an episode. I guess in the Counterfeit Watch episode. Kevin Scannell just gets annoyed with him at the very end and just shoots him in the head. So I go to black and you just hear Chris go, ow. So it doesn't even seem to kill him. Mm-hmm. And then I have the rock fall on him and Married. That was really the first death that you really kind of see that he couldn't have escaped or anything. I mean, the Paperboy 2000, he kind of goes. It's a fade to white. It's a whiteout. So you kind of get the impression, but it's a little bit surreal. But the rock hitting him is a real kind of solid moment. But that's all first season. So he dies quite a few times in the first season. But yeah, it was always my interest in doing that. I very influenced by English television, where there were multiple series where people were mortally injured that then came back relatively unscathed. And I just thought it was a great message. It was a positive message.
See, I was just fearful you guys were figuring if Fox pulls us next week, at least people feel like they saw an ending.
We were never worried about being pulled. Every time we thought we were going to maybe not come back, we had some awareness of it, and I made some sort of nod to it. The last episode of the first season, he does clearly go up to heaven playing a harp and everything. So I always thought if that was going to be, we weren't picked up yet by the time I was shooting that last episode of the first season, the Psychic 2000. I figured that would be a good end image to go out on, that that he goes to heaven and he's okay, I suppose. And then the next time we really were worried was for the clip show when he lands on the plastic explosive bed. And that I did a whole montage of all the sarcastic hugging that we had in the show and played It's a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, that great recording of that. It's one of the few songs that we really, truly, truly loved, and we're not playing. We were sort of playing it sarcastically, but we still loved the song. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of that, I put the end with a question mark, and I did that on purpose. The network didn't want me to do that. There was a big argument about that because I wanted the fans to know that the show was in question and that this death meant more than the other deaths you may have seen, because our future was very, very much up in the air at that point. And we knew most likely we weren't coming back. And it did create a letter write-in campaign, but not big enough. If the Internet had existed in any kind of major way back then, it could have made a huge difference for our show to at least come back. But this was not. I used to get, the president of the network, who was the big hero who always picked up the show, Peter Chernin, called me up and said, we're getting a lot of letters about Get a Life, but it was never enough. I think we got 5,000 or 6,000 or something. But that was the one that I was really giving a message to the audience that this death means something.
Yeah, I mean, weird you are, because Fox is sitting there trying to argue with you about not ending the show, but at the same time they're not saying, and here's an extension for the next 9 episodes or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious the way a network works is you cannot get them to admit that they're going to cancel you. You can get on the phone with them and you say, you're going to cancel us. No. We just don't need any more Get a Life at the moment. That's what they will say. Because they do want to leave all their options open. They want want to look at their development. They want to see how their pilots come out. They want to see if they're an emergency. So, they want to make sure that they're in the catbird seat at every moment, and if they do need you, they don't want you to be pissed off. Well, you already canceled us. You can't have us back. And as I said, they're so smart. When Peter Chernin canceled Get a Life, he did it in the same phone call where he picked up my new series. And he says, "Hey, Dave, great news. We're picking up The Edge. We love it. It's great. And by the way, Get a Life is canceled."
At least he told you. I mean, that was, I've known people who, they always say, and then we went on hiatus, and I'm still waiting to go back.
Exactly.
Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night fearful they're going to call you up going, "Where's the next 9 episodes?"
No, the thing in Hollywood is the true answer is not hearing from anyone, and I wouldn't have heard from anyone had I not had another series that they were picking up. They avoid those negative calls as much as they possibly can. But if they want to continue to have a relationship with you and they have something else going on, then they have to make them. And so it's really bad news when you hear nothing, because that means that not only are you canceled, but we don't necessarily want to work with you anytime in the near future.
Yeah, no. Now the thing is, you had the big truck from Damnation Alley,
right?
And you had Jackie Earle Haley on the show,
right?
Were you trying to get other cast members from Damnation Alley onto the show?
Well, there was a huge demand for it from the audience. No, they were completely random that they would ever be together, in the sense that Jackie Earle Haley was completely on the show because I had used him in the pilot, which sort of started Get a Life, which was The Young Ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that American version of The Young Ones. I cast Jackie Earle.
Now, what role was he on the show? Was he Chris?
He was the Adrian character, kind of the violent punk character.
Okay, Adrian Edmondson's character.
Yeah, and then I wanted Chris to be Rick Mail, and I had Nigel Planer playing Nigel Planer. He was playing Neil, so I brought him over from England. I had Jackie Earle Haley, and that's when the first time I met Chris was to come and do this pilot with me. And Chris and I, fell in love, as I like to say, and we really hit it off. But Chris is a very smart human being, and he was going, "I don't want to be part of 3 people. I'm being offered my own show, single show. I'll wait it out and do that." And then when The Young Ones didn't go, which was a great lesson to me, because I was trying to do this surreal, twisted, dark thing all in one go, and I realized, the way I'm going to have to do this is I'm going to have to ease the audience into it, and to an extent ease the network into it too. I mean, the network, Peter Chernin, again, was a hero. He picked up The Young Ones pilot, but then I always say it tested through the floor, because the way American testing is, which is so flawed, if you have your main characters trying to kill each other in a dark thing, it's always going to test poorly.
Well, because they're always talking to some 35-year-old woman in Iowa, aren't they?
They are, but they're also asking the question, do you like this person?
Yeah.
And no one will say that they're not going to say that they like someone who's acting mean, even if they're laughing and loving watching him.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is, I don't like him, but I'll watch him every week and fall off my chair laughing, but I don't like him. So the questions are flawed. As I always like to say, research has proven that research does not work, but we use it all the time anyway. And it's just a way for people who cannot tell what is good and what is bad in the business to be able to point to numbers and say, well, this said for me to do this. So it's hard. That's one of the reasons television always looks the same, is because testing insists that it looks the same, and that it's all about likability, and it's all about love, and it's all about hugging. So the way to have done Get a Life is exactly the way we did it, which was we eased everybody into it. We did a pilot that was kind of very, as positive and as lucid as that character ever could be and ever was, and then we just quickly evolved him into a darker, more tragic figure.
Well, do you think having Eleanor Donahue, America's TV princess, be his mom, right away set people up to go, he's going to be so nice?
It definitely helped to have those people in there, though. They were a little bit sarcastic in the beginning. Had we given them lines that were more dark, the way they eventually talked, believe me, that would have shown up badly in testing too.
The one where she talked about killing Martin Mull.
Yeah, exactly.
The glee in her eye. I was like. Yeah,
she was great. You can kind of see where Chris gets a lot of his disconnect with reality comes from his mother, because that's sort of the way she deals with things. And she wouldn't always take fully in what was going on. She was always very positive about things and very smiley, but at the same time saying these horrible things about killing somebody. So there's all this untapped rage that would kind of sneak its way out.
Now, and working with Bob, was that kind of a fun little thing for you to get to work with one half of Bob and Ray there?
It was a dream. The first comedy album I ever heard was a Bob and Ray album, and also a Newhart album. And oddly got to work with both of them. And so as a little 5-year-old kid, I was like listening to these comedy records, the first comedy records I ever heard, and I just adored those guys. And of course, Bob just completely lived up to everything I had hoped for. He was so funny, he was so nice, he was such a hard worker, and it was and Chris had that same work ethic that he had gotten from his dad, and they were very sweet together. And it was kind of a dream. There was so much about that show that was a wonderful dream, and that was part of it.
I mean, it seems to me with a cast like that, you had a bunch of people who were doing their hardest to work on delivery and cutting the playing with the script right up till shoot time. Was that?
Yeah, one of the great things. I mean, it's funny. I've changed more over the years. That when you come from the MTM School of Writing, the whole idea of that company, is sort of Jim Brooks thing, is the writer is king, and the actors have to say everything is written and everything. But the more I've done it, and it depends on the actors you work with, but when you're working with great actors like Bob Newhart and Chris Elliott and Bob Elliott, you really want them to be comfortable with the words. So if there's anything they want to change, it's often for the best.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when you have a great writing staff, it's very rare that they want to change anything. But you get more into improvisation and stuff like that as things go. But most everything was written on the script. But the great thing about directing most of the episodes is you could work out some extra things, often not verbally, but visually, which is the way Chris would sit in the chair and the way I would do the camera angle for that, or deciding to do a push-in that was much more psychotic than it originally was in the script. That's mostly what you would get to fool around with on the floor.
I mean, it seemed like you guys had a pretty tight production schedule, so it's like you didn't want to have to sit there and shoot 10 improv moments. It would
have been tough to do that. We really had to get down to business, and even at that, we had 2 days to shoot a show that really should have taken about 6 days to shoot.
Mm.
And so, because I was doing something that, trying to make it look like a single camera show on a 3-camera budget. So on a 3-camera budget, you only get 2 days to shoot, but you have 3 cameras. But still, with all the special effects we had and a lot of the special angles that I tried to set up and the push-ins and all that, it would push us till 3 and 4 in the morning often.
Well, I mean, the episode that blows me away is the one with Jackie, where you guys are at the reunion, and how many setups it looked like you had, especially with all the people doing the stuff in the backyard and things. And I'm like, wow, that's not your normal just grab 3 cameras, clip between some faces, and then move on to the 2 people talking.
That's exactly right. And Dwayne Hickman, who is Dobie Gillis, directed that episode. And he was so great. He did several terrific episodes for us, and he was such a positive, nice guy. And again, it's a tribute to not only Dwayne, but the incredible crew who just killed themselves to get just exactly what you're talking about, something that looks much more like a 1-camera show than a 3-camera show, all within that same time frame.
I mean, what was the dynamic like on that shoot? Because you've got Jackie, who the greatest trouble teen actor of all time on screen with with his work, and then you have Dwayne, who once again teenage actor, and then you get Chris, who trying to be a teenage actor, well in his mid-30s,
Well, it's great to watch any of that stuff, because one of the reasons you like to have, I had Tony Dow direct too, who was Wally, obviously, and Dwayne. Actors understand other actors in a very special way, and because they know exactly what actors need, and so it's a great combination. And Jackie is such a fantastic actor. He's absolutely one of my favorite actors, and it was so great to see him finally get nominated for an Oscar. And I think the work he did in Little Children was as creepy and as funny as anything ever gets. simultaneously. He's just brilliant. And so, what you would see something there is you just see everybody at the top of their game just doing their best work. And I always say that Chris is incredibly underrated as an actor. People don't understand how hard it is to do what he does, and to do all those attitudes as funny as he does them, and to change his attitude, like in an instant. He goes from craven to cocky to crying to whatever, and he does it with complete commitment and so fast and totally real.
So yeah, no, I mean that's massive. I mean, you watch him and you are watching. You think, oh, it's just a reality show, but as you said, the fact that you make he can make those transitions and make them seem reasonable within the character.
That's exactly right.
Because I know I went to school with Danny McBride and those guys.
Oh, right, yeah, he's great.
And Danny's great, but at the same time, their problem, they're all, him and Paul and a couple of the other guys, is they can't work without the ball.
Right.
And you stare, but Chris has this great ability that when it's not his turn, you still think he's he's there.
He's totally there. As I said,
and
incredibly underrated as an actor. He's, I've worked with all these Oscar winners and directed all these Oscar winners, and Chris is right up there with all of them. He's that good, and he can act with the intensity of a cartoon, with the intensity of a sketch, but it still has this great depth to it. And he's always, just like you're saying, when someone else is acting, he's listening, and he's totally in it, and he's not pulling focus, but he's totally real. And he creates a reality around him of any kind. And, part of the nature of the show is the reality change from moment to moment. A flexible reality. Now it's this reality with one set of rules. Now it's instantly this reality with another set of rules. And he would be able to project that with complete commitment, and that would affect all the other actors around him, that they were pulled into it too, and their commitment went up, and their reality went up within that. So it's just, as I said, it's as good as it gets when you're dealing with somebody like that. And when you have that mixed with Jackie Earle Haley and with Dwayne directing and everything, it's just, it's as good as it gets.
I mean, the rooftop scene.
Yeah.
That's. But then again, and as you're saying, you've got all that. Were there moments where it was hard for you when you were directing the show to call cut because you didn't think you were, that it became almost too much of its own little universal bubble in there?
No, you get a very split mind where you're looking at it for all the technical reasons. There's that part of your brain that has to be working. You're paying attention to where the camera is, the way the lighting is, the way their angles of their body. So there's a zillion technical things that you're making sure are correct. Then you're on an emotional level, and you're also figuring out, is that emotional real? Is that really happening really there? And then you're also on a comedy level and say, are those jokes hitting at the right time? So that's part of what it is making those decisions about when you have it, when you don't have it, if you have to do another take. And then another part of you is also looking at the clock. And that's the thing I never knew when I was growing up. I never realized that time is actually the biggest dominant force in almost any production. There's moments where that's not the case, but 99% of the time, you're always watching the clock too. Yeah. So it's taking all that information together and deciding. So it's not a time where you completely lose yourself. You can enjoy yourself immensely, but just for budget reasons, just don't have the luxury of losing yourself.
No. I mean, that's, yeah. Well, especially, as you said, you're doing a sitcom, which, is an art form. It's segmented hard because they're not going to bump 5 minutes to the next show for you.
That's right. Right.
How come Tracy Walter only has such a small part in Hell Loop?
It was just the only part that we had for him. We loved him, and he came in and he agreed to do it. And we knew we were sort of getting a huge bargain for doing that. But that was, that was the thing. I guess it was probably right. There was a way. Sometimes I think that I could have combined him with the guy who was fixing the console, but we really didn't. It wouldn't have made that much sense. So it was just sort of.
But it was just one of those weird things. The first time, I'm going, is that Tracy?
Yeah, it really was. It was Tracy.
No,
Adam and I, we always had, not that he was in it, we always had an interest in Deliverance type characters.
I always loved him from Repo Man. That's just one of the great characters. There's an Oscar-nominated performance that should have been,
Absolutely.
Now you also had on the show, just as an actor, Paul Feig.
That's right.
Now, did you have a sense that this guy was going to go on to become a writer-producer? director?
I predicted quite the opposite. I predicted he would be a giant failure. And I still predict that he will eventually be a giant failure. Everything that's happened is just a quirk, and it's not going to last. No, I loved him. I used him on Newhart, and I used him on Get a Life. And then he sort of became a regular on The Edge, too. I mean, that's how much I always knew what a brilliantly talented guy he is. And, you know, when you have an actor that's that good, that also wants to be a director and a writer, and they have a passion for it, the way Paul did, you often look and go, well, that's going to be good, because he has all that experience of being a terrific actor. And any actor that can really take that and get excited about writing and directing other people often has a good career ahead of them, because it's great when they can do that, because they have a particular insight. And he was always the sweetest, nicest guy, and remains that way. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of his, and always was.
Now, speaking of people who've had amazing careers, I was Brian Doyle Murray.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep joking about it, but it's like him and the brother, his other brother, are like unfortunately, Joel.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at this moment, in the past 10 years, have topped Bill.
Well, certainly they've sort of done more comedy than Bill. But yeah, you know, Brian is the one they all looked up to. You know, Brian is the older brother that taught all the young ones, and they all kind of followed in his footsteps. And you know, he was the god of Second City and all that kind of stuff. And you know, it was a dream to get to work with him on that very first regular episode we did. And he was so funny in that, and I had so much fun directing him. And obviously Chris and Adam loved him too, and so we were always looking for a way to get him to come back. And then when that opportunity presented itself, he came, and it was just this amazing, effortless fun to work with him, because he would just show up and nail it every time. You know, I literally don't ever have any kind of memory of ever having to go back and get anything for it, because he was always pitch perfect the first time. And just nailed everything.
I mean, 1977 episode, when he's playing himself in different, in drag, and his old 70s hair and everything else.
No, it doesn't get better than Brian, and it doesn't get more fun than Brian too. You know, he would just come out and nail everything. You know, I was watching, because I was looking at a clip of Spewy that we were putting together, and I had never noticed it before, just because I've seen it like 8 times. When those guys get sprayed and they just say how big and how sick and how big is this cat? How big and how sick is this cat? Brian, I think, almost loses it, and he never ever broke. And you just see his lips go a little bit, and he kind of curses them a bit, which is not a typical look for him. So I'm thinking that because the crew completely lost it when that guy said that you can play these episodes without the soundtrack, and that laugh for the crew when that guy says just how big and how thick is this cat was such a big laugh that I think Brian wasn't expecting it, and he almost lost it. But that's like the only time. Otherwise, he's just so solid.
Now, did you because as you said there, you had crew laughter on the live track. Were you able to comfort yourself with we'll just cover it with the laugh track Fox ones?
Yeah, well, that was for instance, I shot the pilot. I shot the first half of the pilot with an audience, which I didn't want to do, but I knew I wasn't going to get away with not shooting it without. And the pilot was so complicated with all that roller coaster stuff, I let the audience go home, and I shot the rest of it without an audience. And then when I cut it together, I went to the network, and I said, see how you can't tell whether there's an audience and whether there isn't an audience? We don't need them. We can give you a much better-looking show that has more one-camera value if we don't have an audience. And they said, okay, because they couldn't tell the difference. They had no argument. Because normally they want an audience, because they want to hear where the laughs are, because they can't tell themselves. So anything that gives them a guide is a good thing. Now, in those days, I was never going to get away without having a laugh track. So I knew we were going to have a laugh track, and I also knew that since there was going to be one, I knew that whenever the crew would laugh, which is rare, because the crew they're not easy laughs. First of all, they're seeing it a bunch of times. Second of all, they're busy doing their job, and, so when you would get one, you know it. So I said to them, I said, look, if something strikes you funny, it's fine to laugh. The actors will feel good about it. I know I'm covering it up with a laugh track. I never imagined that I would release the episodes without a laugh track and you'd be left with the crew laughing. But that's why you hear it sometimes. Because I knew the laugh track would cover it up.
Now, were you the one who had to supervise where the laughs went in and stuff, or?
Yeah, exactly. As the showrunner, you do all the editing, you do all the, you're doing all the mixing, and the mixing is when the laugh track is going in, and we would purposely overdo it and have the laughs to make it sound like this weird retro sitcom, and it was kind of fun to also kind of train the audience to laugh at sick stuff that they might not normally laugh at. And sometimes I would really push the laughs on something that was the more inappropriate, the bigger the laugh would be.
Now, did you ever hear the story about the guy who did SCTV's laugh track?
No.
They found, because Eugene Levy, I guess, was telling it, how they kept getting, they were bizarre where the laughs were going. And they never figured it out, because I guess it was when they did the NBC version. And they finally, years later, someone ran into the guy, and basically told him he had no clue what he was doing. He just put the laughs where he thought they belonged. So a lot of times they weren't even syncing up with the right jokes or anything. So.
Oh, that's amazing. See, that's for me, it's being the control freak that you are. You're always there for every aspect of the show, and you're controlling where it goes. Sometimes you sit with a laugh guy, and go, well, no, that one's too big, make it smaller. That one should go there. That one should start a little. That you were controlling it to that extent. Now, of course, I had a great laugh track guy, so there's very little you had to tell him to guide him, but he definitely knew where it was. But you were there every moment to make sure that everything was fine. But yeah, I guess that's the truth, is that a lot of times the actors aren't there. Chris would be there, particularly in the early times for all the mixes too.
Now, what was Eddie Flex?
What was what?
Flex.
Ediflex. Well,
is that like the D-Vision precursor, or?
What it was. There's two versions. I guess you could almost, I can't remember if it changed, but Ediflex, you have to picture, how many is it? It's probably about 18 VHS VCRs stacked on top of each other in two towers. So maybe 9 in each tower, okay? And you would have a cassette, and each cassette had the same thing on it, and you'd put 18 cassettes in each one, and then a computer would run these things so that they would run from cut to cut, and each one would be different machines would be queuing up at different places so they could cut between the machines so you could see a cut before it was online.
Wow.
And that's what an Ediflex system was. And so that way, and sometimes the machines would fail and they wouldn't, and so you'd be watching an episode and it was coming up on a cut and this machine didn't get in sync in time, and so it would all fall apart and they'd all crash and you'd have to kind of rewind and start them again. But that's the way you would watch things. And now, not long after that, those VHS cassettes were replaced by laser discs. And so there was a bunch of laser discs stacked up, and so that was a much more expensive process to kind of make laser discs.
Because you'd have to do the 35 to laser disc?
Yeah, exactly. Oh. Well, yeah, you would do, and like Get a Life, we never cut negative. The only thing that would happen is they would take the negative and they would actually telecine the negative and make a digital copy of it. In those days it was D1 and D2. And if you look at what Get a Life looks like, it suffers from that. Gary Shandling show, obviously, which I also worked on, and almost used the same exact techniques because Gary and I were good friends. I'd worked on this Gary Shandling show, and he was very interested in the way we shot Get a Life, and the way they eventually shot Larry Sanders was almost identical to it. But it's the same thing. Those early D1 cassettes are I find them pretty grainy because both Gary Shandling and both Larry Sanders and Get a Life we shot on Super 16, then converted that negative to D1 and then cut on D1.
Oh, so you didn't even go 35 on that?
No, it was Super 16.
Wow.
That was the only way to afford to do these weird shows.
Now, do you know how many episodes, how many box sets you have to sell for the folks at Sony to do a repost the film shows like they do the Star Trek Next Generation box sets coming out?
Yeah, it would be probably a lot more than we would ever sell. But I would love that. We could actually do it in HD. That would be so cool.
I mean, you guys still have the master somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, they should. In theory, the film still exists somewhere, so someone would actually have to go and find that film and scan it, in full high def. But it is possible. It is possible, but unlikely. I mean, the amount of money it cost to do the amount of shows we did without a laugh track was a stretch, because that's a separate mix to do that. You kind of have to remix the episodes without the laugh track in and still go through on the 20. You have to pull the 24 track and then put that in and match it to picture and stuff, and keep just keep the laughs out of it. And so it's time consuming and therefore costs money to do that.
Now you worked on Larry Sanders, right?
Yeah.
Now what was it like? Because I read you had originally tried to start your career with the Ropers. And what was it like to finally get to work with Jeffrey Tambor after all those years on a different show?
It was a dream, and I directed some great scenes with him and Rip Torn together. The Gary wasn't in, which was a rare thing in Larry Sanders, and that was just so much fun and hilarious. And the biggest problem was to keep me from ruining it with my laughter with those two guys going together.
How long do you keep your fingernails? Are you one of those people who have to dig the fingernails into your palms to keep them laughing?
I don't have to do that. I kind of I might put a hand over my mouth, and kind of like hold my jaw shut when something like that is happening. It's a blessed challenge to have, but yeah, Tambor is absolutely hilarious and fun to work with. And Rip, if you approach him, he's like Gene Hackman. They're looking to get directors, but if you approach them with the right energy and the right knowledge, and they know you know what you're doing, and you know that you're really there to help them, and we're going to have a great time, they get super excited and they work harder than they ever work, and that's really where there's a lot of fun to it.
I'd always been told if Rip invites you to drink with him, that's when he means he loves you.
Yeah, exactly. Or go shooting with him. He always
that's
has
the
a gun
day.
in the trunk. Yeah, that's really the ultimate thing. Let's go. Got a gun out here. I said, well, Rip, we're on Ventura Boulevard. Doesn't matter. Let's see what we can get.
So when Rip recently thought he lived in the bank, you weren't that surprised?
No, there was nothing surprising about that whatsoever. No.
Now the and you worked on The Simpsons, or you still do?
I still do.
So the question I had to ask you: do you make more money than Jennifer Tilly off the series?
I don't think anybody does. Because I still work as a housemaid for Jennifer Tilly, so it probably would not. Doesn't mean that I earn more than her if she's still my boss.
I met the artist. Oh, what's the artist's name? William White? I don't know. He he worked on Pee-wee's Playhouse and stuff. There was a documentary about him that just came out, and I did an interview with him. And his wife was the writer of the original Simpsons on an Open Fire.
Oh.
And she said, yeah, she's kind of pissed at how much money Jennifer Tilly makes off the show compared to what she did.
It was a good deal. There's no doubt about that. But she's a funny woman, and also the funny thing about her is that even though she gets that, she's one of the top poker players in all the world. So it's like so you can't even win her money off her, even though you think you might be able to, but no, she'll just take more money from you.
It's her stake,
Yeah, exactly.
Now what was it? Now, did you ever try to get Don Knotts on the show on Get a Life?
I never did. No, I didn't.
Because I know you worked with him during that period of Three's Company, correct?
I did, and that was a dream too. It was a weird thing because I had when I was a stand-up, I toured with Louis Nye, who had worked on the.
Sonny Drysdale.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so he was like the first guy I met from that group. And then on Newhart, I worked with Tom Poston, who I absolutely love and adored, another Steve Allen guy. And then on It's Gary Shandling show, when I worked on that, I instantly was finally working with Steve Allen. And I wrote one of the favorite jokes, and I was so happy that he liked it because I used to make fun of Steve Allen for writing so many songs. He wrote like 7,000 songs.
Yeah.
And he would always think that quantity was better than quality. He wrote 7,000 songs, 2 good ones, and the rest would just make your ears bleed. But so when he was on the It's Gary Shandling show, I wrote a line for him. He said, "Here's a song that I just wrote while I was playing the last one." And I thought it might insult him, but he had a great sense of humor, and he laughed at that, and he did it, and that was good. So I went right up the line and worked Louis Nye, Don Knotts, Tom Poston, and then Steve Allen, just right in a row in those shows that I worked with. And Don was the sweetest man. I mean, he was so. The whole Three's Company group. John Ritter, the same thing, and we remained friends all the way through. And and Get a Life, his wife is in that. that, Amy Yazbek.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And actually, when I had seen Amy, she came into audition, and then I got a call from John not long after. He says, "I know you saw Amy, and I really think you should use her." I said, "John, you don't have to say anything. She was fantastic, and we're hiring her. She's great." But he goes, "I would really like this." John wanted to do the show, and so we were thinking about that actually. But it's funny. It never occurred to me to use Don Knotts. I didn't.
Well, look at it this way. You got a year and a half of the amount of time that you were spending. You look back at it, and it's almost like you survived a tornado.
Well, it was a tornado that was kind of fun to be inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it had these incredibly negative aspects in terms of some of the struggles with the network. That was frustrating because it doesn't always come out. We were the top-rated new show on Fox the first season. And so really to have the trouble we were having was not through our popularity. Our ratings were actually probably as high, if not higher, than like what The Big Bang Theory gets today. So, we had a good amount of audience, particularly for Fox, that were fans of the show. It was just the content that was this constant battle, and that was kind of tiring. But as much as that was tiring, it was exhilarating to work with Chris. It was exhilarating to work with Jackie Earle Haley and everybody, and Brian and Bob. So, that's always what got you going.
It was a worthy struggle.
It was a worthy struggle, and there were so many highs and so many laughs. We laughed so much in that writing room and laughed so much on the set that, like you're saying, it was a dream nightmare, as I call it. It was this exhalure.
You're bringing, and later on you bring in Odenkirk and Charlie Kaufman.
That's right.
I've talked to Bob Odenkirk in the past. You're talking a man who's. I don't think there's anything he can't do. It's the wrong thing to say, but just comedically he can nail characters, and dramatically too, like he does. Breaking Bad, he's comedic, but he's serious. And
he's a terrific actor, and that's what we saw the most on the show, is that he was even more of a performer than he was a writer. And it was similar to when I worked with Conan on The Simpsons. Though Conan really, really wrote an enormous amount more than Bob did. They're both, ultimately, their favorite thing was to perform for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bob would keep us in stitches that second season. He was constantly doing characters, constantly doing bits that were really, really funny. And then I remember not long after the show going and seeing his stand-up for the first time, and I was just in pieces. It was so funny. And then directing him on the Larry Sanders Show as Gary's agent,
mm-hmm.
He plays great unctuous characters. Let me just put that.
Well, I was always upset that he basically had a character stolen in Iron Man 2.
It's true.
It's the slimy industrialist. That was him. It was
that was him. Anytime he could totally nail those kind of characters. He's perfect at that.
He took it. I remember, was it Martin Short used to do the little lawyer character on SNL?
That's right.
The slimy, but Bob took it to the next level.
That's right.
So and I was like, no one's taken it beyond what Bob can do at this moment.
Someone will have to do that. It's like that's the perfect thing. It's like Martin Short inspires something, and then Bob will inspire somebody else. And what I'm trying to say is Bob's washed up. This is the last thing of Breaking Bad that you're going to see.
I think he's going to get killed, and that's going to be it for him. He'll be doing conventions for the rest of the night.
That's right. That's right. No, it's great. It's great. It's it's always an interesting thing because you watch somebody and you go, wow, this guy really wants to be a performer. I hope it happens for him, and to watch it happen for him has been great. It's just been terrific.
Is it good for you when you can sit down like with the Get a Life box set, and I don't know if you did or not, go on the IMDb to find out what people are up to, and go, oh, they've had a really good career after the show.
Yeah, you keep an eye. Obviously, I don't think Charlie Kaufman's done anything since Get a Life, but most people. No, yeah, it's great. What I always love to see in the business is nice people doing well, and when you know somebody and you know they're good people and you know they're nice, and there's so many nice people in show business. There's difficult people too, but the vast majority I've been so lucky that I've worked with are super good, nice people. And when they do well, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good. Not so much if they're doing better than you, but still, you got to accept it. It's just fine. No, it really is.
Now, was it odd when Charlie Kaufman started, with the Malkovich and stuff? There was this level they were trying to create this mystique of Charlie. So he didn't know who he was. He was this mysterious stranger. Were you sitting there while these news, the entertainment reports are coming out about him, going, I know who he is.
I know he is.
He sat on my sofa,
Well, the truth is that Charlie, in a way, has the mystery to him, even if you knew him back then, because he was so incredibly quiet. He had come to town to try and get a job, and nobody was interested in his stuff, and I was the only one that responded. I have no idea why no one else did, because I thought it was brilliant right away. And I called him up.
Now, what was the spec script for? Do you remember?
I can't even remember what it was. I just remember it was good, and it might have been sketches. I think it might have been. But I instantly recognized, a good, sick mind, and I called him up, and he was just about to leave town because he had gotten no response at all. And I said, well, don't leave town. You can come and do this. And he was thrilled. But he was so quiet in the room. He was very easily intimidated in those days. Even though we had a very friendly room, it's just speaking in front of other people was difficult.
Well, was it one of those things where, you had all these people, especially Odenkirk and you and a bunch of others. Was it like, that horrible moment where you're not the only one? I had friends who went to school of science and math, and there was that intimidating factor that for the first time in somebody's life, they were the stupidest person in the room. I'm not saying he's stupid, but I mean that moment where you're not that guy. You're all that guy.
I think he was always a quiet guy. I think that he never, where I was and Bob was and, Steve Papoon somewhere in the middle. Jace Richdale was a good, great verbal guy. So, I always tried to create a room atmosphere where we could say anything and do anything. We were not judgmental in a negative way. The best way to get great work from people is to create where you're really in a family situation, where it's just all protected and all nice and everybody likes each other and everybody's trying to help each other. That's where you're going to get the best work. That's been my experience.
So kind of the opposite of Lorne Michaels?
The opposite of Lorne Michaels, where everybody's supportive, everyone's trying to make each other laugh, and everybody wants to be made to laugh, that you don't want to be the only one. So it's that kind of a thing. And when I get into rooms like that, when I first go into a room, I can be very quiet if I don't know the people. I'm sizing it up. I'm shy. I really am. But then once I realize that it's safe, then it starts coming out. And a lot of it is unconscious, so you don't want to be thinking about it. You want to be in a place where all your unconscious thoughts can just come right to the surface and you're just channeling things. Charlie, even in a room like that, no matter how comfortable it was still his skill set was not in oration. It was on the page. And his scripts were terrific. They were very, very good for a beginning writer. I loved them, and I could see the talent to a point where I brought him over on the edge, too. I mean, I liked him that much. But the entire time, always quiet in a room. And then when we did the Paley Center, he was Oscar nominated for Malkovich at that point. He was still very quiet in the Paley Center. But since his Oscar, I've heard some interviews with him where he won't shut up. So he's definitely gotten much better.
That's good. He's learning how to sell.
He's learning how to. Yes. He finally, he's talking a lot now. So it's. But yeah, back then it was a quiet guy.
Yeah, I had the opposite happen back then. I actually wrote a spec script when I was trying to do some sitcoms.
Right.
And it would Get a Life.
Oh.
Did I doom myself completely by doing that when I sent it into agents and whatnot?
It's very possible, because agents were one of the people that were upset by our show. And in fact, if you watch on the DVD, we do Horrible Secrets of the Writing Room, and I'm there with Jace Ridsdale and Steve Papoon, and both of their agents tried to guide them away from going on the show. In other words, they go, that show's not going to go anywhere. Chris Elliott's disturbing looking. The show's too weird. You guys want to be on a show that's going to be around. And, they had a point in that way, but both Jason and Steve, insisted and came onto the show. But, yeah, the agents themselves, same thing. Because Get a Life was making fun of other sitcoms and pointing out what crap some other sitcoms were. I mean, we weren't trying to make fun of great sitcoms. We were trying to make fun of crappy sitcoms. We love great sitcoms. But the agents were threatened by the show in a similar way that some network executives were threatened by it.
I fear it was stigmatized.
It was. And, you'll see the other documentary, Judd Apatow's on there, and he talks about his spec Get a Life that I read. And he wrote a spec Simpsons and a spec Get a Life. And I think I really liked his Simpsons and brought him in for an interview on Shannon's recommendation, actually, and I really liked it.
How come you didn't do an Evil Twin Brother episode of Chris Elliott?
We could eventually have done every stupid idea, believe me.
Yeah, well, that was my spec. That was like the thing.
Oh, there you go.
The whole idea was that the Evil Twin Brother shows up and the family's happy he's there because it turns out all the photos of Chris that are on the wall and stuff, it's the twin brother. They never took pictures of him.
See, that would have been good. You should have gotten it to me. You know, as you know, it's always the hardest to get a show that you write for to buy your script, because we always have all these stupid. Every show has its own stupid rules that no one from the outside could ever guess.
Yeah, my brother got lucky. He wrote a Star Trek.
Oh, there you go.
He was still in high school. He sent it in, and they accepted it, and they rewrote it and stuff. But still, it was like
that's major. That's major stuff.
That was his little, unfortunately, but it was like we sat there. It was like the high schooler. He actually got to go to conventions.
Oh my God.
That's good.
Yeah, that is. That's good.
Now, are they doing anything for the release like they did with? Are you doing anything at the museum and stuff, or for the release of the Get a Life box set?
You mean for the Paley Center?
Yeah.
Well, we already
did one a couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, we did one back in 2000, I think it was. They haven't asked us, since. I mean, they generally are concentrating on shows that are on the air. I mean, maybe eventually they'll ask us again. I don't know. I haven't checked into that at all or heard anything about it. I always said that even when they did us in the year 2000, it was we're running out of shows to celebrate series. That's what
have you next to, I guess the Ropers would come back. Yeah,
we're going to do the Ropers now. That's right. The only reason I wrote the Ropers was because that was the only contact I had in the business, and he told me to write a Roper, so I did.
Did you get to meet Norman Fell eventually?
I never got to meet Norman Fell, no.
Because he's one of the great Ocean's 11.
He's fantastic, and maybe my favorite thing, and I think that was sort of the role he was playing on Three's Company, was the Landlord and the Graduate, which is one of the big movies for me.
Now because I read in the thing you point out one of the interviews you were talking about your Kubrick having a major effect on your perspective of things. Did Chris have a great Kubrick stare going at that point?
What do you mean by that?
They always have the Kubrick stare moment where the person
where the eyes go up in the head.
The eye and the camera just slowly creeps.
Yeah.
As they build up the pressure inside.
Well, he's always, what Kubrick loves to do, and it's what you're talking about too. His idea of crazy is somebody with their eyes looking a little bit up. Like they're almost looking into and he does that look. Yeah, he does it with everybody.
Scatman in The Shining, perfect.
Exactly. Or in Full Metal Jacket, right before everybody gets that. He always has everyone do that same look. And Clockwork Orange, obviously. So, the one big Kubrick nod was the Clockwork Orange sequence, and I was really thrilled to use the Wendy Carlos music because that blew my mind at the time. The Spectrum Follower, which is sort of the precursor to the vocoder and that Cher sound and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kind of, you don't want to blow your brains out when you hear this, and it was so cool. Beethoven's Fourth and stuff, and doing that whole scene, that was a real kick.
Now, how was it getting Eleanor Donahue on the show? I mean, and when you told her she was going to pretty much spend her time in pajamas in the bathrobe, how'd she react to that?
The great thing about Eleanor is that she totally got that. She understood exactly what was going on, and she understood what she had done for a living on Father Knows Best, and also I worshipped her because she was on that Star Trek too.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's on an original Star Trek is the main babe. There's no goddess greater than that. She just totally got how funny and ridiculous Father Knows Best was, in today's society. And even then, that she understood, that it was too sweet. And so she had a blast just kind of, taking that character and kind of making fun of the exact show she had been in. And so anything we asked her to do, it's like, I'm there, I'm doing this is great. So, you never met a more positive person. And, the only thing, she was always worried that somehow, that, as she was insecure. So, am I doing okay? Do you like me? I said, are you kidding? We adore you. So you let her do that, and she was fine. But, yeah, she was up for anything.
Oh, that's good. And now, have you ever seen the Bizarro episode of Father's Knows Best where he turns fascist on the kids?
I haven't seen that, I don't think.
Oh, it was like a one-time run. It's on the box set.
Oh, great.
I can't remember the name of it off the head of the bat, but the dad decides he's going to treat the kids like communists. And I sat there horrified at it, watching on the box set, going, wow, I can see why this one didn't go into syndication. But now, and as you said, because I guess that was about the time Ray had passed away, right? Just before the show started.
Yeah, he passed away during the show.
Oh.
Just as it started, and Eleanor talked about that at the Paley Fest, where she said that Bob really he became much warmer to her after his partner passed away. It sort of opened up a part of him that he was even sweeter and nicer to her at that point. So she found out more about who he was at that point.
Do you think it was in a way it was very beneficial for Bob that he was on the show at that point?
I think absolutely. The fact that he was working and keeping busy, and he genuinely enjoyed. I could see how much he enjoyed it.
How many other Elliots were involved in the show off the camera?
There weren't any others that I was aware of. It was funny. I saw Abby and Bridie, his daughters, periodically. They were just tiny kids at the time. They would come to visit, or I would go over his house, and they would be there. But other than that, it was just the two of them, and very sweet father and son relationship. Chris had such great respect for his dad.
Well, they did the Daddy's Boy book together.
They did, and they did.
I love that book.
It's a great book, and they did that Action Family. I guess that was a Showtime special.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
I didn't get to see the whole thing because that was back when I didn't have Showtime.
I think it's available somewhere. It's really, really funny. He did that with the people he used to work with early on Letterman days. Later he worked with Adam Resnick, and they did great stuff together. And then, but before that, it was Matt Whitline and Sandy Frank, and they did two Showtime specials that were really funny. And there's his father plays an ice cream man. It would just devolve into fight scenes for no reason, and he and the ice cream man get into a fight to the death. And they showed that scene to Chris's daughters, and they started to cry because Daddy was fighting Grandpa. That's one of my favorite images.
Daddy's Boy semi-inspired me and my cousin when we did our trip of the lighthouses.
Oh.
Because Bob writes all about the lighthouses, and we went and shot the lighthouses. I was like, yes.
The book inspires many sweet stories.
It does. It's a sweet thing. And as I said, it's having the fun. Have you ever thought of reviving the series with Abby in the lead now?
You never know what can happen. Now
I saw you're doing the Richard Branson project next.
That's right.
Now, is he as big of a character as Chris?
He's a different kind of character. Richard has a very, very firm grip on reality, but it's a reality that is amazing. It's a reality like, I'm going to get in a balloon and travel around the world and be the first man to do it and travel faster and risk my life, and I'm going to shoot myself up into space. First guy to do that commercially for people. It's amazing. He gets these would sound like really crazy ideas, and particularly in the ballooning stuff, not really knowing exactly what he's doing, but kind of finding his way through it. It's amazing. He's just such a force of positive energy. It's very annoying.
What about his face on the ice cubes? Have you seen those ice cubes yet?
I haven't seen them, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, his face on anything wouldn't surprise me. He's such a master of self-promotion because if I do something really stupid and bizarre as myself, and that humiliates me, he says I'll get $1 million worth of publicity that I otherwise have to pay for in advertising.
I think the naked woman while he was parasailing or something?
Exactly. Yeah, he was on water skis and he had a naked model wrapped around him, or he'll dress up in drag, or he'll jump off the side of a building. It'll all get him this free publicity so he can save money in advertising, and he enjoys playing the fool very much.
So it's now it's almost the opposite of Gal Life, where you have to figure out how to tone this guy down to make him more real, isn't it?
Well, it's the story is as interesting. It's a fascinating story because what's great about it, what's exciting about it, is it's the Social Network, except about a nice guy. About a guy who made $1 billion without being a giant jerk.
Well, here's a guy who goes from the Sex Pistols to Airplane.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
how do you explain that in life?
The airline really did come out of nowhere and freaked a lot of his partners out when he wanted to do that, because it's such a risky business. But that's kind of what he's in love with the most. You know, an adrenaline junkie.
I think was it Warren Buffett who said the next time I open my mouth and say I want to buy an airline, you have full permission to punch me in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
No, it's a great, and it almost went under and took the whole business with it a couple of times. So but yeah, it's a movie that you haven't seen in a way that, like, here's a guy, here's a way to make $1 billion without being evil, and that's a message that's not out there enough. That you can have a certain amount of compassionate capitalism and still be incredibly successful. You don't have to screw everybody to get to the top. You know, the amazing thing is that all the people that I've talked to that have worked with him since they were 16 years old, you know, actually as a friend since he was 4 and 5 years old, that he started the business with, and then someone else he brought on when they were 16 and 17. I can't get them to say anything negative about them. I mean, they don't work together anymore, but they still only say that he's a good person.
So they're not even whispers of, and then he did this, you know.
Well, there are people, certainly his competitors and stuff. I can get to say, well, you know, he's incredibly lucky, and he did this, and he goes, no, well, that's just what that is. But yeah, everybody who he's worked with and partnered with, you know, that they've had a long-term relationship with him, say really good things.
So nothing goes to the point where they just go, I'm legally obligated not to reply to that question.
No, it doesn't. It's like it's a really hard thing to be in business with people that long, and then to end that business relationship, but end it on a positive note where they feel that they were treated fairly and everything.
Now, this almost sounds to me it's like a film, but you also have to do almost like a mini-series documentary.
Well, it's, you know, the closest thing to it is it's a funnier version of The Aviator. It's The Aviator without the mental illness.
That's as long as there's not you know, fingernails and balls of urine laying around the room.
There isn't. So it's a I mean, if there's a mental problem, it's toward the adrenaline junkie aspect of things, you know. But that's sort of considered to be a positive mental state.
And it's positive for you because it's exciting footage.
It's great. I mean, you know, people don't realize those balloon trips, they were like space capsules.
Oh, yeah.
And because they went up, the only way to break the record and to get across the ocean is to shoot up into the jet stream. So the balloons would travel at over 200 miles an hour, and you need the amount of fuel you need to get across the ocean is these giant telephone booth-sized canisters of propane. So you're basically in a 12-ton bomb that's flying across the ocean. You don't want to get struck by lightning. You don't want to have any. And then when you land, you have to get rid of all that before you land, or the whole thing's going to blow up that way. So it's completely out of control, and they don't completely know what they're doing. So it's a great visual thing. Like the first balloon across the Atlantic Ocean that broke all the records, first time it ever happened, furthest traveling balloon, fastest travel. That balloon crashed 3 times before it finally set down, and almost killed them. I mean, it's very funny but scary at the same time.
You're bouncing around. Well, I mean, they're strapped down, right? But still.
Well, it's like a capsule. I mean, what happened is, you know, they tried to land on land, and they dropped their tank. And then an updraft hits them because they're much lighter, and then they almost crash into a farmhouse, but they smash all their antennas, they lose all their power. Now they're being flown out to sea, and a water landing is much more dangerous because this is where everyone. I mean, 7 people who had done this before them had all died trying. It's not for the weak of heart.
No, it's a death-defying stunt because people have died.
It died just like weeks before trying to do this thing.
Yeah.
So then they get down in the water and they smash into the water, and you're supposed to release the balloon because it's being dragged across the ocean wave to wave. So things go bam, bam, bam in these 20-foot waves, and they hit the bolts to release the balloon, but because of that earlier crash, they have no power left.
Oh.
So they can't release the balloon.
They can't
so
get
they have to unstrap themselves and jump out. So the first guy jumps out first before Branson, and that makes the balloon shoot way back into the air so that Branson can't jump out. And he's hardly the expert at flying the balloon, so now he has to figure out how to get back down. So, and meanwhile, the other guy's in the water. Nobody knows he's in the water. He's in ice-cold water for 2 hours. It's a nightmare. It's a hilarious nightmare.
I mean, that's
So it's
that's going to be the meat of the film in the middle, or
it's a great combination of these incredible visual action sequences with balloons and boats crashing, and mixed in with the business with starting a record business in the middle of the 60s, at the end of the 60s, early 70s. I mean, the Beatles, the Stones, everybody's around.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, and that business almost failing, then the record shop business almost failing, then the airline almost failing, and so all the kind of intrigue and fun of the Social Network mixed in with an action movie. So
a man who just knows how to take things to the edge.
And it totally lives on the edge all the time, just totally. And anytime anything gets settled, will purposely, because that's what it was. It was at the moment where the record company was finally successful, was finally on firm footing, where he said, "Now we're going to start an airline." And the other board members just went apeshit over that. I mean, it was like, because we have all this money and you're going to risk it. He goes, "Well, the only risk to me is to not move forward."
Yeah, no, he's about moving. As you said, and that's what makes him different from so many people. He's risking. He's willing to go bigger.
It's the only thing that interests him. He was never interested in the money himself. He never particularly lived like a billionaire. He lived on a little houseboat, and just always traveled all the time. So the amount of money he had never meant anything to him. It was always about, well, let's do this next.
It's the rush.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a guy who likes the rush in the boardroom and in the wilderness, I guess.
And in the wilderness, and even in the customers' faces. He loves people, where he loves to meet everybody. He loves, like if he flies for his airline, he'll be on there, and he won't just sit there. He'll walk around the plane and talk to everybody.
We used to joke, though, because I tell you, the perfect person to cast, I don't know if you ever ran into Dale Pollock.
Dale Pollock.
Producer. He did Meet the Deedles and a couple other things. But he taught at he was at the film school when I was there, and he looked like, we kept calling him Branson. He had the white beard, the hair flowing back. Like, yep. You're trying to get mistaken for Richard Branson, so you can get a free plane flight. Like,
that's right.
My plane is here. But no, that sounds. I mean, this is because it's one of those things. With a career like yours, to be able to latch on to such a project is amazing.
Yeah,
I'm guessing you're getting to hang with Richard occasionally now and then.
Yeah. He's been incredibly sweet and cooperative, and we've hung out and talked about his things, and as I said, he's a really great man.
And you haven't found out any dark secrets from him, so.
I have not, unfortunately. The thing about him, which is also very, very likable, if you read his book, Losing My Virginity, he puts out whatever darkness is there. He doesn't try and hide, the failures and the struggles that he went through, doing all this. He tries to be, it's very self-deprecating, which is a natural English way anyway. It's one of the reasons I like English comedy and stuff.
Yeah,
America has a tendency to be self-celebrating, and English has a tendency to be self-flagellating, and I definitely go in that direction. Almost all their comic heroes are losers, like Ricky Gervais or
or at least they're losers in their parents' eyes. I remember
they're losers in their parents'
eyes.
eyes.
Years ago, Graham Chapman came to North Carolina twice, and we hung out with him.
Right.
And that feeling of there was no greater, worse moment than when he had to inform his folks, "I'm not going to be a doctor anymore."
That's right.
It was like the gay part they could handle. The doctor.
That's right. Yeah, the doctor was the doctor was.
You have to spring on us.
I worked with Graham Chapman right up to his death. Actually, it connects to Get a Life because I did the young one, and then I was still talking to Chris, and we were talking about working on something. But I had made a deal with Graham Chapman to do a TV series because I had almost worked with him on a show called Jake's Journey during the writer's strike. He had asked me to take over that show and run it in England, but I refused to do it during the writer's strike, even though it was legal. I didn't want to do anything that was going to help the networks, have programming. And so CBS wanted to do the show. I wanted to do the show. I love Graham, and obviously we work a lot with Eric Idle on The Simpsons, and he's become a dear friend too. He's another Beatles freak like me and stuff. But
Eric's the ultimate. He was Beatles paraphernalia at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah,
when he was hanging out with George Harrison.
He's totally, and
because that was what Graham was taught, because he was going through what was wrong with the different Python members, And Eric, he said, the problem with Eric is he's hanging out with George Harrison and he's not an ex-Beatle. And it costs you after a while. I was like,
well, he shouldn't complain because, like I said, Life of Brian would not have happened without George Harrison.
Oh, no. He didn't complain about loving George. He was, but it was just that feeling of, he plays at a different table at the casino. You know, we make Monty Python. I mean, because Graham was pissed off when I met him the first time because they had made the deal with MTV for 2 years exclusive for Monty Python.
Right. At
$200 an episode. I mean, he freaked out. And then the best part was, of course, when he got furious when he found out they'd signed off on that deal. And John Cleese basically said, we should be glad we get anything for those rags and bones. And it was like, let me get this right. The first 5 seconds of a commercial just paid for MTV to have this show on. Now, did you get to drive the Damnation Alley vehicle?
I didn't actually drive it myself. No, I was.
Or did you ride in it? I should say.
I did. I think I probably rode in it for a while. But I was most interested in. I shot a lot of the second unit on that, so I was constantly looking on the outside to sort of see its angles and whatever, and get it to move the right way, and get it to wiggle enough, and look out of control enough.
Yeah, I got to see it once when it was parked in front of somebody's office building.
Oh.
We were driving through L.A. and they had it behind the wires, and we're like, it's Damnation Alley and Paperboy 2000 at once.
Well, that was totally the reason that I used it, because it was when I was shooting the pilot for Get a Life. I was driving by it every day because it was on Cahuenga at the automotive place. Mm-hmm. That made it, and so it was always in my head. It always cracked me up when I saw it. So when I heard the idea, Chris is replaced by a robot, I instantly went, no, it should be that thing that I'm seeing every day, that really ridiculous vehicle. And,
was it fun to actually grab things and go, I want to use this, and be able to actually make it happen?
It was hilarious. It was really, that's the great thing about show business, is you can sort of, let's work with that person, let's use that thing, and it suddenly happens. And I think in the DVD, still so happy about, I included the brochure that came with the with the Landmaster, I think it's called, and I show how much it cost. It cost us like $5,500 because they had to take. Well, one of the prices was they had to take the guns off it and then put them back on when we were done with it. I should have left them on.
It would have been more menacing of a paper machine.
Absolutely.
But because they just put that out on put Damnation Alley out on Blu-ray.
There you go, perfect. It
all ties up. They did Larry Sanders Show.
That's
and
right.
It's Gary Shandling
show. They did its Gary Shandling show. That's right.
They are almost your home. When are they going to put out The Edge? Have you started asking them about that?
We'll see. We'll see if that ever happens. It's harder with a sketch show because those things are so. They're so of the moment. I always would try and write sketches that would last a long time, and maybe I could compile something out of it. But there's a lot that were really, really about exactly what was happening at that time. It's just the nature of those types of shows.
Yeah, I mean that's always the ones that survive, like Monty Python,
right? And
even Kids in the Hall are the ones that actually have nothing to do with current events.
It's true.
As soon as you it's like, you're watching Hangover 2, and there's a Jonas Brother joke, and you're sitting there going, well, that's not funny anymore,
And was it funny to begin with?
Not really, but it was even less funny now.
I know, that's right.
That plus but it was that feeling if there's a chance you can grab something that's going to be immortal and be with us forever, or you nail the flash in the pan person that people are going to have to search online to find out. Is this person even on Wikipedia now?
That's right.
Now, do you update your own Wikipedia or at least edit it?
They generally don't like you to edit your own Wikipedia, so.
That's where I got some of my questions from. So that's as far as
I see. Yeah, and sometimes I've definitely had the experience where there's things wrong in it, and you try and tell them that, and they say, well, if it's in if it's in a book or something, we're going to listen to that. And then you go, well, the book is wrong. The book is just full of things that are incorrect. And they go, yeah, but it's in there. And you go, but that's not vetted. You're hearing that it's not true. And so they sort of, that's when you wind up going, well, when I do this next interview with a magazine, I'll make sure to say that this thing that they said is not true.
And then you've got your link to it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only way you can do it. But they won't take it from the horse's mouth, even if a a book has something completely wrong.
Now, how did you not end up on Cabin Boy?
Well, Chris and Adam, were a team that from Letterman, and they, that's really, as much as close as I was with Chris and as close as I was with Adam, they still were, closer even the two of them. And so when the opportunity for Cabin Boy came up, because I think Tim Burton was a huge fan of the show, they went ahead and they did it. And I was all supportive of, whatever was going to happen, because I had my own things going on too that were outside outside Get a Life. I was doing other projects, and this was just another project they were going to do. I mean, we always had talked that we would maybe do movies together and maybe move forward together that way. But this was something that they sort of took on their own and did it that way. It's just what happens sometimes. It's just like, when I went and I did The Edge, it was something that I didn't include Chris or Adam with. So it's just like, in the same time you're working together, you're also doing things on your own on the outside of it.
I mean, well, it's easier if you all don't own real estate or something.
That's right.
As long as you don't invest in the restaurant together, you can, do things on the side without feeling like you're cheating or whatever.
And you had me, I was running the show, and so I think it was sort of a feeling like, well, let's see what we'll just do on our own. Like do something that they're going to be in charge of and get to have complete control over. And I completely get that.
Now, who's the oddest person you've ever met that went nuts when they found out you were part of Get a Life? In a good way.
You get, you get a lot of people in the academic world. I've gotten a lot of professors of physics and stuff, and you'd be very surprised if they be into something that stupid. And but they do. They get into it. So that might be, and some people at NASA, who I also know, love the Deep Space Homer episode. That was like NASA's, of course, favorite episode of The Simpsons. And they actually had me send the DVD of that before we had made it available and sold it. I made one here and sent it up to the International Space Station.
Oh, wow!
And actually have a picture of. I asked this astronaut Ed Lu. I said, send me a picture of you watching the DVD in space, and being very literal, he had the DVD floating in front of the Earth at the porthole, and he was looking at the DVD itself. So it was interesting. The DVD I burned in my house was now floating up in space. It was very interesting to see.
That's an honor.
It was a huge honor because I come from the aerospace industry. I was an electronics engineer at the very beginning of everything when I was starting out, but as most comedy writers are. But so there was a lot of people in NASA that also like Get a Life too. So it's somewhat disturbing.
Oh.
And then, as you said, with Charlie Kaufman, John Malkovich was a big fan of Get a Life and wanted to be on the show. And when you say brother, I had in the back of my mind that possibly he would come on as Chris's much, much older brother that no one ever talked about.
So the Chip Cunningham of the family.
Yeah, exactly. But it could have been weird to actually say that he was his twin and be clearly 20 years older. Would have been hilarious too.
How long did it take you to shoot the clip show at the end?
Well, the last three shows, and I only know this because of the DVD, during the DVD, I remember the last three shows, because we weren't writing anymore, we hadn't been picked up for any more scripts, I just directed all three shows in 4 days in the last week of December, before, the week of December 20th, 1991. And so I directed Bad Fish, 1977-2000, and the clip show over 4 days, and I actually put that shooting schedule on the DVD. And it's fun to look at the shooting schedule because you can see all the stupid things you need to shoot an episode to go, like Chris Head, explosive bed, all the stupid things that you would need to shoot an episode. So I thought it was funny to put that up there.
You were able to cram in the exploding bed on a 4-day shoot.
I actually had to reshoot the exploding bed because as good as our special effects people were, they could not give me an explosion that was big enough that I liked for what I considered to be a finale.
Whose backlot were you using?
That was Radford. So that we were, it was the same place they were shooting Seinfeld at that point, and where Gus's house was the same street as My Three Sons.
Oh.
The opening sequence takes place a bit on the Leave It to Beaver Street at Universal.
I've been on that one, yes.
You know that one. In fact, the woman bending over, Lee Garlington, the great actress, that's in front of the Munsters' house.
Lee Garlington, okay.
Lee Garlington is a great actress. She was in The Killing this time, and she's been in a bunch of great things.
Oh, so, okay. Well,
she's also the actress that has the affair with him in the Married episode.
Yeah. Now, see, it's kind of funny because we used to joke because I had one of my buddies at the film school was the camera guy, Bob Collins, and he shot the pilot for Miami Vice.
Ah.
And he would go on about how those two girls who take off in the bikinis at the end
right.
went nuts, and they would show up demanding money occasionally from the production studio. But I'm going to guess Lee didn't actually show up to demand money at that point.
No, she was a good friend of mine, and it was a big favor for her to do that opening. As I said, we finally used her in that episode as the neighbor. So it was fun.
Was she calling you often saying, when's the neighbor scene coming up again?
No, she was busy, and I was lucky to be able to, that her timing actually worked out that she could shoot that, as a matter of fact.
I mean, it's such a great opening. It's
happened by accident, because we originally wrote that as just a montage in the pilot. And then when we decided to use REM, the song Stand, when I heard that song, it sounds like the organ grinder monkey in the beginning. And that gave me the image of the pedals going around. So I shot that separately. So I shot separately the close-up of the pedals and then the pull-out, and you see him on the bike because there's the guitar hit that happens right after that, and it almost sounds like a joke to me visually. So the pull-out was perfectly timed to that on purpose. So that was shot separately, and him throwing the papers, we all knew that was going to be part of to the music. And then we took pieces of the montage, like him throwing the water in his face, and him crashing into the car. That was all shot on the Universal backlot as part of a, not an opening, but a montage, and then just made it all into the opening of the show.
Now, when you were shooting on the Universal backlot, did you end up hanging out at the Bates Motel a couple times?
The Bates Motel was actually, some distance from that street, so you couldn't get there that easily.
You couldn't sneak over without security, knowing you were off your
You could, but the sad thing is your time is so precious that you don't have time to have any fun. You're just busy. You can't really explore things. You're just shooting and working all the time.
That was like the highlight. I was working with a guy at Ben Myron's office, and he's like, "Hey, let's take a ride." And I was like, "Sure." The next thing you know, we're parked in front of the house in the Bates Motel.
Yeah.
He's like, "We can't get out; they'll arrest us." Like, stay in the car. That, plus we used to show up as the cars go by, as the little buggy thing would go by with all the people in it, and yell,
"That's right.
Tuesday, NBC, see ya!" Yeah. And
you have to be careful when you were shooting. Sometimes you would get interrupted by the tour.
Oh, yeah. But that's the best part. We keep wondering if there are people staring at a photo of me going, when does this show come on? Who was that man?
That's right.
But now but now when you took out the damnation, the land thing, which backlot were you using? Was that the?
That was the Universal backlot again.
Okay.
That's the same backlot, and you see the Peterson house is there, and he stands on the roof in his Paperboy 2000 fighter outfit. And so that was all that lot, and we went back there for that.
Now I've got to ask you, because Chris doesn't really contribute much on the bonus features.
Right.
Is it just one of those things where it's almost like he needs to keep himself separate from the character?
It's always hard to answer for him. I mean, Chris thinks in a very unique way, so I can't speak for him. We would have loved him to be on the set, and we asked him, but I don't know what the details are about why it didn't work out or whatever. But it just happens that way sometimes. I think he's a clever man, and I think he knows it might be great to have a whole DVD of people saying great things about him instead of him having to say that.
Almost like when Donald shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right before Donald makes it over.
That's right. It's like everybody gets to talk about how great this guy is.
Yeah. I've got to say, it was rewatching the Jackie Earle Haley episode, because I'm a big fan of Jackie. I think I've always believed Bad News Bears, the man was robbed of an Oscar just on that. Or Kelly.
He's one of my favorite actors of all time, and he said, I never know what I'm telling you this, or I've told somebody else this, someone else brought it up today. He's on there because he was on the Young Ones. and we had that relationship from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I cast him in that, and I loved him, and we had a great time. And he was so disappointed the young ones didn't get picked up. He would call me all the time. Goes, is it happening? Is it happening? I said, I'm working on it. We could never get it happening.
So when's somebody going to make a movie, a show where he's like the manager of a Hooters? Because that seems to be what you'd imagine him doing at this point.
He would be great in anything, and I was so thrilled that he got the Oscar nomination and got recognized for what a brilliant actor he is.
Yeah, I mean, I had buddies up in Toronto when they premiered it, and they were like, "He's back." And
he's
it was like,
back,
wow.
And because he was gone for a while.
He was great in Watchmen too.
Yeah, he's great in everything.
Yeah.
He's as good an actor as there ever is.
It's like one of the amazing comebacks in a sense. Well, except I mean, it's like that. Your show seemed to mark right before I guess he split back for Texas.
It was. I mean, he was really. It was hard for him to find something, in that period. It's often hard for a child actor to transition smoothly, and which is why it's very questionable to have child actors, because it's not really sentencing them to a good life.
Well, now they just go straight to Tollers and Tiaras.
It's really true.
Yeah.
It's really true. It's not a good thing to do to a young psyche, is to have them being in movies and stuff. And and he did the right thing. Is he walked away from it in a healthy way, and then he came back to it in a healthy way. So
do you almost think that's one of the reasons why you didn't have too many kid actors on the show?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of working with kid actors, and that girl Taylor Fry, even in that show, she had about 12 overdoses while we were shooting the show.
No.
Always pulling heroin needles out of her arm and stuff. Obviously, that's a joke.
I know.
Sweet kid, and I would always make sure that she was only working when she was happy. You tried to really keep an eye and make sure the kid was being treated correctly. And we used them incredibly sparingly. It was not something that because there's a level that most of the time it comes across creepy when you have kids, because they aren't being natural. I think Louis C.K. does a great job on his show with his kids. And he always says the same thing. He won't shoot with them if they're not in the mood.
No, I mean it's going to show. It's going to show worse than anything else.
It is, and it's important that the kid gets to stay a kid, and you don't force them to be an adult that has to hit a clock and do things when they're not emotionally up to it.
No. Well, listen, it's been great finally talking to the man behind Mirkin Vision.
There you go.
When did you come up with the Mirkin Vision? Have you actually tried to hire somebody to come up with a Mirkin Vision lens or filter or something?
We're working on a whole series of optics. I think it's going to be huge. It's going to interface with Final Cut Pro brilliantly, and everyone's going to be using it.
Wow. One of the biggest rushes I almost had was we went down to Joe Dutton Camera the day after they had shipped out Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon lenses.
Oh, is that right?
They had them there for a while down
wow.
Wilmington. We were like, that was the rush. I was like, I want to see the lenses. I want to touch them. I touch where Alcott pulled focus. Come on, where are they? And they're like, we shipped them back to England yesterday. I was like, nah.
No, it's yeah. I mean, I talked to one of Kubrick's cinematographers for a video I was shooting for James Taylor, and we wound up using these snorkel lenses that Stanley had used, and it was very exciting to do that.
Now, when did you work with James Taylor on that?
I work with James Taylor all the time. He's a dear friend of mine, and
then I am hated by him.
Does he hate you?
No, his mom did.
His mom hates you?
She was performing at, he came, this is back in '84 when Jim Hunt was running for Senate against Jesse Helms.
Right.
And James was hosting this big fundraiser at NC State's campus at the basketball arena.
Uh-huh.
And I was hired to be, for some reason I was volunteered to be front stage security.
Right.
And I'd gotten yelled at because somebody had snuck past without a pass.
Ah.
And the next thing you know, this woman comes up with these people behind her. And she says, I'm James Taylor's mom. I need to see my son. And I said, do you have a pass? He goes, no, I'm his mom. And I said, you have to have a pass, lady. And finally somebody got back there, got her a pass, but she sat like 2 rows in front of where I was standing in front of the stage. And she gave me the evil eye for 2 hours.
Oh, jeez.
I was like, sweet, lovable lady, but man, I kicked her off royally on that one.
It's not an enviable position. It's not an enviable position.
It was an odd thing. I got to meet Leland Schuyler a lot, so that was good.
Yeah, he's great.
He's still around, correct?
He is. Yeah, absolutely. They had a reunion concert, I think, in 2010 were all, I mean, I know all James's band now, but his original band, which is Leland and Russell Kunkel, Daniel Korchmar, and Carole King, was the and so they did that. They did an amazing. It was actually probably the third most successful tour, or second most successful tour of that year. The Troubadour tour. It was sort of a celebration of that anniversary of some sort.
And he still has such a great voice.
He's so talented, and he plays the guitar in a very, very specific way. We're all guitar players, like Eric Idle, and we all play, Beatles songs, and I play a lot of James Taylor songs. And because of Eric, I got to play George Harrison's favorite acoustic guitar that's made by a friend of mine, Danny Farrington, who's probably one of the best guitar makers in the world. Made for everybody. Johnny Cash, Kurt Cobain. You can't name a person he hasn't made.
He made the souped-up guitar for Cobain. That acoustic.
No, this was actually Cobain's electric guitar.
Oh, okay. Because I remember that the acoustic one he had, they did on MTV. That was just. That was
an awesome.
That was a souped-up guitar to the nth degree. It was
yeah. No, Danny's amazing. But yeah, and I actually do. I've shot music videos for James Taylor. This one had like Barbara Hershey in it, and it was around in '97 or something. I was using these snorkel lenses, and then we still do stuff where we're now doing. James Taylor teaches his guitar technique, which is an incredibly complex, difficult technique to play, and put cameras inside the guitar hole, looking out, these GoPros, and then a camera on the neck, and you can watch this thing, and it slows down to 50%. I'll make an app that'll eventually make it so that you can loop it, and it'll have all the tablature and everything.
You must need to get like some sort of LED guitar neck. So remember the old bullseye guitar method they would advertise?
Yeah. Well, there are guitars that still have those that have LEDs in them that show you where to play and stuff like that.
Because I know this guy. He does Zemp, and they've come up with a way that they can make a player piano reproduce exactly what's being played on a record.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's the most frightening. They've done Glenn Gould and Art Tatum, and you sit there and the guy's house is amazing. It's like you wonder. It's like a Doctor Who set.
Right.
You walk in from his washer dryer into a 16th century concert hall that he has built in his house outside of Raleigh.
Wow.
And this computer, and you truly are. It's everything. Like you're watching the computer, the keyboard slap its own keys.
Wow.
Like doing the Art Tatum, it's ghosts.
That's so cool.
And so sitting there thinking of the James Taylor, it's like you almost need to see the instrument work this way to truly understand how he's reaching these notes.
It really does help, because by having the camera inside the guitar looking out, it's the first lesson where you don't have to reverse your fingers in your head, because you're actually seeing it from the same point of view as if you look down at your fingers.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with the camera on the left hand. I flip that image because that's the way you see the fingers. So you don't have to flip it in your head, so it's one less thing for the brain to do when you're trying to follow all the complexities that he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the confusion. I remember somebody telling me the best person is to get somebody the opposite hand to teach you. Yes,
it is. And so this is almost like that.
Yeah.
This is almost like that, where instead of looking at somebody doing a mirror image of what you want to do, it's right on. And they've been a lot of fun. We just do them for fun. We put them up on the web for free, and it's just a giving back, because I learned how to play by watching him, so it's fun to give it back. He loves to give it back. He's a good man.
And at least he doesn't have freaky fingers, so it's not like it's not like learning how to play the Tony Iommi way, where you have to figure out how to get an extra half an inch on each finger.
That's right. He has pretty long fingers, so it can be frustrating sometimes. And he plays, like, the whole reason his sound is the way it is like he plays his D chord and his A chord backwards. He has the index finger up on the high strings instead of the low strings, and that's why there's all these hammer-ons and pull-offs there that you sort of never heard up to that point, because he plays the guitar incorrectly. But that's similar. The Beatles also played their guitars incorrectly, and that created different, interesting sounds that you wouldn't hear. It's kind of bad to be classically trained, because it's too limiting.
Yeah, no, I mean, classically trained and unable to just weird out on yourself.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. It's much more interesting when you hear people kind of figured it out on their way up, and and it's full of their own kind of quirks to it. I mean, that's always what I respond to.
We sat there. We'd gotten hold of 16 millimeter footage of Jimi Hendrix at the Miami Pop Festival.
Oh wow!
And the camera guy, for some blissful reason, focused directly on his hands and sped up the film so it was in slow mo.
Wow. Wow.
And it was just the most fascinating.
Yeah, you can't imagine what that
fingering effort, and you're just like, oh, well, you know, and you realize why this guy was special.
Yeah.
We still haven't found out what happened to the footage because it turned out the guy who owned it, who tried to sell it to the Hendrix, or the wife who owned it, because her husband was one of the producers on the festival, and she had sold it to the Hendrix family, but then it turned out that the festival had defaulted on its loan and never declared this as part of the real properties.
Wow.
And so when the bank found out about the sale, they went in and grabbed the footage. And who knows what's that? They had like the footage. They have 3-track with Eddie Kramer was doing the board on it.
Wow, that's
and
so
they
great.
also had Zappa and I think it was Love.
Those could have been the first guitar lessons from Beyond the Grave.
It probably will be at some point when they come out. But
I'll keep an eye out for that.
Cool. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you.
Great talking to you too, Joe.
Good luck with everything, and I'll definitely make sure you get the link of this when it goes live.
All right, fantastic.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, take care.
Great Conversations is copyright by Joe Corey's Cine Dean Entertainment. Thanks for listening.